Okay, hello everybody, good afternoon and welcome to today's session on commitment to collaborate to prevent and relieve homelessness, the Toolkit launch. We're all really excited about this because we've been talking about commitment to collaborate for a very long time. I'm Councillor Thompson, for those that don't know me. I'm the Cabinet Member for Homes and Neighbourhoods at Birmingham City Council and also the Chair of the West Midlands Combined Authority Homelessness Task Force Members Advisory Group, the longest title I've ever had in my life. So other than welcoming you, I think I'm just going to go through, can we stick to the online etiquette that we've all learnt over the last 18 months? So if you can make sure that everybody remains on mute unless they are speaking. If you can use the hands up function or put questions in the chat, that'll be really appreciated. And I know sometimes some people suffer when it comes to bandwidth and all those kind of things. If you need to turn your camera on, we will not be offended if we can't see your faces. So across the region, we have been working tirelessly, I think, over the last few years around addressing homelessness. And I think we're all on key, famously saying this is about designing out homelessness across the West Midlands. And we are all on the same page as that, regardless of where you sit, whether it's in the sector, whether it's politically, whether it's from a local authority, community group, we're all on the same page that we want to design out homelessness. So a number of things have been happening across the region over several years, and to actually walk towards that ambition of that. And we've seen some really good outcomes for people who are homeless or have been homeless, or actually are at risk of becoming homeless, not falling into homelessness in the first place. So I'd just like to say thank you to everybody across the sector that's been involved in that. But one person that's helped us across the region to kind of get ourselves together is obviously our Mayor, Andy Street, who's the Mayor of the West Midlands. And he's going to be talking to us a little bit about what his views of the commitment to collaborate and everything that we're doing. So I'm not going to take up too much time speaking here because we've got a full agenda and there's so much that we want to get through. And just to remind everybody, we are recording this, so please be mindful of what you're saying. It's almost you're live on Channel 4. So Andy, over to you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Thompson, or Sharon, if I may be so familiar. So there we go. But you've been very generous in your introduction. So let me just start by equally thanking you for your leadership in bringing everybody together, and indeed the cabinet leads from all 7 of our authorities. Because my few words today are going to be about this notion of collaboration. And in a sense, I need say no more than just say Sharon and her colleagues have shown the importance of collaboration and what can be done when we all work together. So it's a privilege just to respond to your introduction. Now then, in terms of reflecting on this word collaboration and where this all will take us, somebody's just needs to put themselves on mute, unless you're a designed heckler. I don't know. So anyway, let's just reflect on this commitment to collaborate and the evidence, I would say, that we already have across the region that collaboration is incredibly powerful in this area. So let's go back myself to 2017, the first mayoral election, and I was lucky enough to win it. And I heard a lot in that election and before about the huge challenges we all faced around homelessness. And I will admit, most people on this line know a lot more about it than I do. But I did know one thing, that if we brought everybody together, we'd got much greater chance of success than if each of us valiantly were fighting it in our own niche, our own little part of the system. And I think what's happened over the last few years across the West Midlands is actually a huge testament to that power of collaboration. I have, of course, to pay tribute to Jean Templeton, who, of course, stood forward with a little bit of arm twisting behind her back to chair the Homelessness Task Force that we set up back in 2017. And I think, in a sense, that bringing together of everybody was the first real sign that the WMCA could play a convening role, and it was all in the spirit of this working together. We know, of course, that the WMCA doesn't have a formal statutory responsibility. That lies with other people, largely the local authorities, but we could be a bit of the glue. And I think there's a clue to the collaboration in the way in which that has been gone about. And as Sharon said, the mission that the task force set out was, of course, this whole question of designing out homelessness. And that meant teamwork in all of its forms. And what I've seen is an incredible sort of sense of teamwork across the region. If you're going to have a designing out, different people play roles at different parts along the positive pathways that we talked about. And we've seen people coming together in that way. And so it's only right that I pay tribute to our councils, as I've already said, all the individual statutory agencies, of course, all the voluntary sectors, and everybody's played their role in this collective effort. And just this morning, it's probably worth just drawing on one other example of collaboration in action. One of the sort of real successes we've had, of course, has been our Housing First scheme. And this morning, we were reviewing that scheme with the mayors of Greater Manchester and Liverpool City region, the 3 pilot areas, and with the Minister for Rough Sleeping and Homelessness, local MP Eddie Hughes. And it's just worth reflecting, I think, on the power of collaboration in that pilot. First of all, there's been a collaboration across the country. It's clearly really powerful that a couple of the areas led by Labour mayors and the West Midlands, myself as a Conservative mayor, much as I wear that lightly, came together. There's a power in that. There's a power in the collaboration with central government. They put the cash on the table. We were the pilot area, so working with government actually commits them into something. Of course, power in working with different government departments as well. It's not just about MHCLG, but the Health Department, the Ministry of Justice, DWP, the Home Office, they've all got their part in the success of that pilot. And of course, our housing associations, the individual organisations that have played the supporting role, and critically, some people with lived experience who are now the individual support officers in those support companies. So it is genuinely a brilliant example of collaboration at work. And I think that's why, in a sense, we've been able to be so very, very clear in our requests of government there as well. The other sort of very obvious example of collaboration at work is, of course, the link with the members advisory group. Sharon says it's a long title, but it's a very important title, the role that Sharon does there. And again, I feel we've got a movement across the whole of the West Midlands working together there. I'm not going to be sugarcoating the issue, though. We know we've still got huge challenges, and we know that an obvious area is the issue of the sufficient supply of affordable accommodation. And I'm very optimistic that the network that we've set up, where we're working together, will help us break through on that issue as well. Hopefully a lot more of that over the next few weeks and months. So bringing it to today's launch, we've had a record of working together in a collaborative way. We've seen the benefits of it. So it only seems sensible that we actually then put together on paper this notion of a formal commitment to collaborate. I know it's voluntary at the moment, but some of the best things in life are voluntary, actually. And so I hope that what we've actually got laid out there is a resource that everybody will feel able to use. Big thanks, of course, to BVSC for their work, and their branding is quite rightly on the front of it, for the work that they've done in drawing this together. But of course, the real plea today is I hope that every organisation, almost irrespective of where your part is in this total journey, will find this beneficial. And one group of organisations I'd just call out are businesses who might not think they're in the front line of homelessness the challenges around homelessness, but they're all employers. They're employers of vulnerable people. So hopefully the resource here that some businesses might be able to use in thinking about their responsibilities as well, just as we talked about with business in the community a couple of years ago. So it's actually a pleasure to see this come together. It's a huge tribute to everyone who's worked, and I hope it will help us, Sharon, sustain the undoubted momentum that we now have. So thank you for allowing me to say just a few words of reflection about the critical importance of that spirit of collaboration. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Andy. It was really welcomed. And I think you've got claps there coming through and everything. So now we want to move on to our chair of the West Midlands Combined Authority Homelessness Task Force, Jean Templeton, and she's going to talk a little bit about the task force, which most of you will know about, but also how the designing out through a commitment to collaborate all came together. So over to you, Jean.
Thank you very much, Councillor Thompson. And I suppose, you know, there's a lot of thank yous, but I think that spirit that we've all had of working together kind of across region, cross sectors, you know, cross functions, really cross politics. It's been a real privilege to be the independent chair of that, a real privilege. And I think certainly I've learned an enormous amount, and I hear that from other people, that we're all learning an enormous amount. And you know, you know, Andy's talked about what collaboration actually means, and that kind of working together. And Councillor Thompson, we sometimes have a joke, don't we, and talk about, it's like, you know, football analogy, it's playing the ball, not the person. You know, it's the kind of grown-up stuff that we all have to do sometimes to rise above what some of the irritating elements of so-called partnership can be, and then really look at what is it that we're actually trying to achieve here. And I think the designing out homelessness piece is really interesting, and we've collectively had a lot of challenges about that focus and that objective over the last few years, because a lot of the talks about, no, we need to be ending it, and none of us would disagree with that, but ending it almost sounds like it's a particular point in time and it'll all be gone. And I think what we all collectively know is that's not the case. It's a perpetual issue. And the idea of designing out, you know, prevention by design, intentional, perpetual focus on prevention and what leads to homelessness, and tackling those upstream issues collectively is where we're all coming from, I think. So it's and hopefully I think it's started to become more common parlance now. I think I hear design out. I don't think we get quite so many challenges around why you're calling it designing out homelessness than perhaps we did a few years ago. But if Neelam, if we can just go on to just got a very few slides, folks, will be relieved to know. This was when the mayor first set up the task force, and I think, Andy, we talked about as almost it was an assembly of the willing, wasn't it? During the initial elections, there was lots and lots. Homelessness was visible. It was nationally very visible, and a lot of attention paid to it. And it was an issue that concerned people. And I think the idea of a task force initially was, well, okay, we need to come together, that sense of coming together to do something. And I think what we then tried to look at, okay, how do we do that? What is it that we're trying to achieve, and how can we do it? And so we pulled together initially at task force a steering group of folks from across sectors in the region. So all of our local authority lead officers and the business sector, the voluntary sector, other public services, to sort of look at, you know, how can we add value? Because the whole thing about the statutory responsibility for homelessness very clearly lies with our local authorities, and they commission services with their partners. And so it was about adding value, not adding work, which we often say. What can you do? How can you make that kind of whole greater than the sum of the parts, and not get in the way of what's really happening? And I think most of us, and lots of us on this call, lots on the task force, we spend most of our days dealing with the personal issues of homelessness, you know, the people that come to our doors that need our help. But there are both personal issues, and then there are systemic and structural issues which contribute to homelessness. And I think what we thought we could do by discussing this collectively, well, how can we tackle the systemic issues? How can we do that, work better together? And so those different sectors came together, and we kind of co-designed, and we used a model which looked at, you know, what are our strengths? What can we achieve here? What would good look like if we were successful? And we came up initially with these pledges, and you'll see across the different, you know, our public services, our businesses, our housing providers, and Faye's going to talk a bit in a little while about the housing provider one, you know, the ambition that no one is made homeless from social housing. So these were lovely pledges, and we had this lovely session getting to these pledges. But then you come to the point and you're thinking, right, great, nice banner, looks good. How do we make this happen? How do we work together to actually make this happen? So it's been the journey in relation to the commitment to collaborate, and then turning that commitment to collaborate into an actual tool that helped us get to the stage that we could operationalize these pledges and then turn it into a toolkit, really, is how we've got to where we are today. So just, Neelam, if we could go to the next slide, please. Now this looks quite complex, and it's lovely colours and it's all in your face. I put it up here because we talk about, you know, the systemic issues and the kind of structural issues, and that's what we've really had to focus on. And the one I've got here is around young people, mainly because I personally am more comfortable from a St Basil's perspective talking about young people. But we've also looked at these from the perspective of children and families, from the perspective of older single people and those that are rough sleeping. And sometimes we refer to them as, we think about it as a table. And if you think about whether it's a round table or a square table, whatever, but you know, if you've got your four legs working on your table, it kind of holds it pretty steady. And if you think about it in terms of what keeps us steady individually and in families, whatever, and if you look, say, from a young person's perspective here, if you've got good support, you know, good, healthy relationships, whether that's within family, within friendships, within the care system, they can be relied upon and trusted. That's one leg that's pretty good. If you're involved in something that's taking you towards, you know, your own independent means, so you're in educational training or you're in work or you're moving towards that, that's another good leg of your table. If you have good health or you have access to good health services, collective services that keep you healthy when you need it, that's also another good leg of your table. And then the other one is, if you have a truly safe, affordable, sustainable home that is yours and you have a key to that front door, then your four legs on your table are pretty solid. But there's all kinds of elements, all sorts of risks that happen, and we've identified some of those on the left-hand side, and they can compound each other. And it could be starting anywhere. You know, your health might be affected. It might impact your job, might impact your relationships. You can't afford your home. Could be any of those. It could be, you know, your job goes and that affects your health. It could be you're under pressure, you know, your home goes, it's not a safe place to be, it's at risk and you have to leave it. All those things can compound each other. And for many of us, and you hear it said often, don't you, we're all only one paycheck away from being homeless. Not true, totally not true, because actually most of us have got a depth behind each of those four things. Most of us have got support that we can fall back on. If my son loses his job tomorrow, he isn't going to be homeless. You know, but for some people, they do not have the depth behind those things, and therefore it's very quickly easy to tumble into it. So we collectively, from our systems, you know, we need to reduce those risk factors and we need to increase those protective factors. And we need to move from this blue circle up here, which is all too common, quite frankly. And many of us on this call have just been on an earlier one, as Andy said, about the Housing First with the 3 regions. And so many examples there were given of, you know, people having to find their way around complex systems with limited resource, not being able to keep appointments, not being able to get the assistance they need. And that support not always working together and compounding the problem. And we see that time and time again, where, you know, you've got this access to siloed services, high thresholds, multiple access, generic approaches that don't understand the specific circumstances of the people that you're dealing with. And that can lead to multiple exclusion. And that is worse for everybody. It's worse for us, society, it's worse for individuals, it's worse for families. So what we've been trying to do within the task force and the wider networks is shift to this other, break that cycle and look at how do we have integrated, accessible services, capital I, capital N, so that we keep people included, that our mainstream becomes fit for purpose. Our universal space, as we would call it in the pathway, becomes fit for purpose. How do we get upstream so that people don't have to be in crisis to get the support that they need? How do we do that upstream and really make our services fit for purpose and help those that are identifying signs of falling out of our mainstream services, help get them back in that? How do we have process which does not overwhelm everybody, so all they're focused on is the process which actually serves purpose? And we have to have safeguards in that. We know that we're talking about public money, we're talking about, you know, public resources, but let's not just get carried away with the process so we end up forgetting what it's for. And if we do this, our experience is that we can help people keep people in our mainstream systems. And if they're about to be at risk, we can identify early, we can use our intelligence, we can use our data to help surround that, put that surround support then and help them get back into those mainstream systems. And our view fundamentally is if we do all of that, it's better for everyone and we have reduced social and financial costs for all. And the boxes underneath are, and I'm not going to talk about them here, but you'll see them in my next slide, because from the Combined Authority and the Homelessness Task Force perspective, all of the work we did, all of the mapping and gapping and life course approaches to how do we keep people in, distilled down into these 5 priority areas. So Neelam, if we can just go to the next one, please. And this, for those of you on this call who are involved with the task force, this will be imprinted on your brains. And I hope it doesn't keep you awake at night. But this is what we refer to as the plan on the page. The plan on the page, really. The designing up, the objective, designing out homelessness in the West Midlands. And the pathway underneath is the one that has now been converted into the commitment to collaborate toolkit, really, and inform that. And it comes originally from the youth homelessness pathway, but it's really applicable to any group, because it is about thinking, what is our universal space? Okay, society, what's our universal space in the Midlands? You know, what is it that we all have access to? There's an education system, there's health systems, there's other elements, but they start to get a bit more, well, they're not for everybody, or you have to be means tested, or you might have to have this issue, or you might have to have that, and you've got to find your way there. And then, you know, it might be that actually you can't do that because you need to do this first, and all these bits happen. But think carefully, because we all have a universal space, whether or not, you know, we are a charity and a registered provider providing services for young people. That's our universal space. We're also an employer. You know, we're also a partner. We also work with lots of others, and all of us do multiple things. So it's thinking about that. It's how do you keep people in, you know, that inclusion in your universal space and whatever we create collectively. How do you know who's at risk? So that if you're an employer, you don't just think, okay, so-and-so's performance really going downhill, they're really being difficult. You know, I'm going to have a one-to-one with them, and then you start the process and, you know, you see it as a performance issue. But actually, if you start to have those conversations, think, I wonder what's going on for them. I wonder what else might be happening. Those 4 legs of the table, are there kind of wobbles elsewhere? And how do you deal with that? So again, keeping people in school, in college, in university, in a job, really important contributor to preventing homelessness. And then that crisis prevention, there's massive focus on crisis, isn't there? And that's been great. There's been loads of resources that have been directed at rough sleeping and other crises. But if we only ever focus on crisis, we're only ever going to get crisis. And so what we want, there will always be crisis. I don't actually believe that things end. There will always be, but we need to minimize that. We need to make it for the shortest possible time. And what we need to do is we need to push the other ends of the pathway, so we're keeping people in. And if they are in crisis, we are moving them on very, very quickly, enabling them to recover so it doesn't become entrenched and embedded, and we're helping them move on. And fundamentally, absolutely critical to everything is that safe, settled home. And we know we have supply issues there. So we looked at that, and over the last nearly 4 years, we mapped and gapped. We looked at children and families. We had a great task group looking at them. We had a great task group looking at young people. We had another one looking at older singles, and we had the rough sleeping task group still meeting to this day. And brilliant, the West Midlands had the largest reduction in rough sleeping in the country, minus 62% in that count. And fantastic work that was done by all of the partners and everyone working together to achieve that. But, you know, things change. People are out again. There is always flow. So that perpetual intentional prevention is really important. And all of the work we did distilled into these 5 areas. And we've got action plans, detailed action plans across our region coming out of all of those 5 amber boxes that are there. Because ultimately, it is about how do we change our mainstream strategies, processes, systems in order to keep people in. And we will never, ever do that well if we only do it independently. We have to do it together. We have to use our services to wrap around the person, to wrap around the families, to keep them in safe homes. We have to find a way of doing that collaboratively and bringing our experience, our resources, our intelligence together in order to do that. And so from that, because we've done it, and colleagues in Birmingham Social Housing Partnership, in the criminal justice system, in the regional one, and also in health, had a go at doing it, and we did it kind of making it up, quite frankly, as we went along. And then we thought, no, we need better. We need to do this better. We need to turn this into something that has proper guidance and can work. And so we were really, really pleased to work with and commission Birmingham Voluntary Service Council in order to help us turn this into a proper toolkit, which will be a free resource, so that people can use our learning, hopefully, and really commit to that commitment to collaborate to prevent and relieve homelessness, and not just the statutory duty to refer. And ultimately, I'll just cheeky sneak this in, Andy, we'd like the government to adopt a statutory commitment to collaborate beyond the duty to refer. And finally, Neelam, just you've got the slide that's got the toolkit is now there for people to use, but I know we're going on, and Faye from Walsall Housing Group is gonna give. They were really generous in really testing this out for us to near destruction, I think, Faye, but not quite. So, and again, back to that, if we can keep people in, capital I, capital N, integrated care systems, everything else beginning with I and N, it's much better. Thank you.
That was fantastic, Jean, always captivating. Thank you very much. And intentional prevention, I think that's where we're going with this. Intentional prevention across sectors. That's what makes this really exciting. So now we're going to move over to Faye Shanahan, who's going to be talking to us about using the toolkit in our everyday practice. So thank you very much, Shannon. Sorry, Faye, it's been a long day.
No worries, thank you, Sharon. I'm just going to try and share my screen, which is the first time I've actually done this, so just bear with me. If it's, can you all see that?
Yes, we can, thank you.
It works. Fabulous. Okay, so thank you for inviting us to be part of today. We're absolutely delighted to be here to support the launch of the Commitment to Collaborate Toolkit. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Faye Shanahan. I'm the Corporate Director of Operations at WHG. So a tiny little bit about us, because not everyone will know who we are. So WHG, we were formed as a stock transfer from Walsall Council back in 2003, and we're the largest social housing provider in Walsall. We are now a regional housing provider across 18 local authorities across the West Midlands, providing 21,000 homes to our customers. We're also a strategic partner of Homes England, and we pride ourselves on being more than just a landlord. So just a little bit of background about who we are. So as an organisation, like many social landlords, we have always been committed to sustaining tenancies. You know, we're not in the business of seeing people lose their homes. So our services have already been designed in a way that really supports this priority. Our eviction levels are low and have been coming down year on year steadily, certainly pre-pandemic. Obviously last year was exceptional because the courts were closed, but we already had a downward trend. Nevertheless, we wanted to challenge ourselves, and we had a really good session with our board that Jean supported. So thank you, Jean. And we created a new ambition that we have committed to, which is not to evict anyone into homelessness. So for us, that is a real challenge because, as I say, our eviction levels are already low. However, you know, we are up for this particular challenge. So when I heard about the new toolkit that was being talked about and possibly being launched, I knew immediately that this was going to be a tool that could really help us meet our ambitions not to evict anyone into homelessness. So I was really keen that we got on board really quickly with this particular idea. So as an organisation, we are really lucky. We have a lot of in-house support already available for customers, and this won't be any different to other housing associations. So we have our own money advice team, our own employment and skills team. We have a wellbeing team and a health team, and our most recent team that we're bringing on board thanks to health funding are our kindness champions, and that is in a direct response to the pandemic around loneliness and isolation and anxiety. So we are already doing an awful lot in this space. However, what the toolkit does is it really challenges us to look at our services to see what else we could be doing. And that's where, you know, I'd really encourage everyone to take the toolkit and work with their teams through it. So what we've done is to support this work, we set up a new structure. So there is a steering group that I chair, which is our homeless prevention steering group, and we also have an operational group which is led by James Wall, who would have been here today had he not been on holiday. Now James's team is very operational. It involves colleagues from across the organisation, and that is really important because completing this toolkit, it's not just sitting in one team. Everyone within the organisation has a role to play when it comes to homelessness prevention, and we wanted to give colleagues the opportunity to really influence the actions that are going to be coming out of the toolkit as we've completed it. Progress will be reported to our executive team and our board to make sure that we are on target to hit our ambition of not evicting anyone into homelessness. So a little bit of practical experience then to share with you. So as Jean's already outlined, there are 6 key parts to the toolkit, and the template that you fill in is really easy to do. And essentially, sorry, I thought I heard someone there, sorry. So essentially what we do is we look at each part of the toolkit. So you can see there are 6 columns, all then corresponding to the previous slide. And you essentially tick where you have already got something in place in that space. So what's your universal offer? What's your targeted offer? Where's your crisis and prevention offer and recovery and move on? And really what this enables you to do really, really easily is see where you might have a dominance of support and where your gaps might be. So it's a really good visual representation where you are as an organisation. So this bit was really easy to do. And we were able to list everything that we were doing really, really quickly. The next bit was a little bit harder. Sorry, where are the gaps in our provision? So this bit really involved us having a deep think about what more could we do? So, for instance, EPO stands for Eviction Prevention Officer, and that was a pilot role that Walsall Council had funded for 12 months. This is pre-pandemic. And really what we wanted to do was see whether or not a targeted resource could help us really prevent some of those evictions that are harder to prevent traditionally because people don't engage with us for whatever reason. And the role was really, really successful. So now we're looking at embedding the learning that we took out of that initiative into our services. So it's sustained into the future. So we've had some really, really proactive and thorough conversations with our teams about where the gaps in our provision might be. So where are our opportunities to do more? Again, this is, for us to be able to say, we've got a lot in place already, but these are now going to start to form our commitments into, where we're going to be taking the commitment to collaborate. So the outcomes. So for us, an organisation, and each organisation will be different. So for us, we came up with 3 pledges. And our pledges are, we aren't going to evict anyone into homelessness, and we're going to be sharing this ambition far and wide with our colleagues, with our customers and with our partners. Our second pledge is we're going to use our data. So all organisations will have data around their customers, people who use their services. And it's about understanding what that data is telling you, so you can identify proactively at an early stage where something might be going wrong that needs an intervention. So for us, that will mean that a tenancy is at risk of not being sustained. And we really want to be having a conversation with our customers at the earliest opportunity so that we can positively engage with that household. And it's not got too far down the line. I think the key here is catching things quickly and not allowing things to go on. And the third one is that no eviction will proceed without approval of the housing director. And this is just so that we have the scrutiny that we need within the organisation to ensure that every possible intervention has been tried before that eviction is approved. So for us, an eviction is a very last resort. And we need to make sure that we've tried everything we can, both internally and with our partners, so that we do sustain that tenancy. So that is why we have reintroduced the check at the Director of Housing level. We think that is a sufficient seniority within the organisation to be able to make sure that we are scrutinising those evictions. Underneath each pledge is an action plan. So I've only given you here a snapshot of some of the actions that we are committing to. And as I referred to before, there is a whole structure that is overseeing the implementation of this action plan to make sure that we do stay on track and that we do deliver our pledges that we've made in order to be awarded the Commitment to Collaborate award, which we're very proud of. So under each pledge, a number of actions, and then we'll obviously then monitor those in terms of its implementation. So the second one, we're going to be using our data again. This is just expanding on what I've said already. This is all about early intervention, collection with care, and ensuring that we're using our community housing officer model, which is what the CHO stands for, to make sure we're raising awareness around our priority around homelessness prevention. And that's the actions that are going to be supporting the sign-off of all evictions with our housing director. So essentially, feedback from us as a pilot organisation, we are really positive about the toolkit. It was really intuitive, it was easy to follow, it created an awful lot of discussion across the organisation around what more we could do to help prevent evictions. And this, I think without this toolkit, it would have been more of a challenge for us to do this, because we already had a commitment and an ambition not to evict into homelessness. But actually what the toolkit gave us was the framework within which to have those conversations strategically and operationally with our colleagues. We've been able to set a clear set of objectives and actions that we're now implementing, and we have a clear process working with our stakeholders We've had fantastic support from the team at the Combined Authority, and big thanks to Paul and Jean for all their support, and Neelam to help us, guiding us through this process. It has been really, really positive experience for us. So just a quote from James, because he isn't here today, just to say that he found the workshop really enjoyable. The notes are really clear, the content is well thought out, and the group were universal in their praise. Fantastic support from Paul, and who has guided us through all of this, through to us collecting our logo, which of course we're very proud of. So all in all, I would really, really encourage you to sign up to the Commitment to Collaborate and work with it within your organisation. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Faye. I think you've reassured a lot of people that it's not going to be a daunting experience. And I think that's always helpful. And congratulations on the ambition in Walsall to get this going. So that's fantastic. So we have about 15 minutes left, and we're at that point where we can ask questions. So if anybody has any questions, feedback, comments, please can you just indicate and let us know, and those that have spoken today will be more than happy to address some of those questions alongside Paul, who's been working on this as well. No comments, questions? That's not like you guys. Okay, we've got Kevin Rogers. You're on mute, Kevin.
It's only been 16 months. You think I'd have learned. I guess, I mean, especially based on everything that we've heard today, what's the immediate next steps for as many social housing providers as possible, certainly to sign up to this and for us to kind of really get going on it?
Brilliant. Those are the kind of questions we love. So who wants to answer that one? Neelam, Jean?
Yeah, we can answer that one. That's a nice, easy one. Thank you, Kevin. Basically, the whole toolkit now, it's available on the WMCA website. The link was in Jean's slide, so we'll share that after today. So yeah, please go on, have a read, have a think about it. And if you want to run anything by us, then please get in touch.
Fantastic, and I hope many of you will take that up. It's a great way to do a bit of a health check actually on your processes, which is fantastic. Okay, the next person is Peter Richmond. How are you, Pete?
I'm good, thanks. I mean, brilliant things to hear this morning, and from fantastic people as well who will make us do it in any event, even if we try and get out of it. I think it's fair to say. I guess my question's sort of an addition to Kevin. Really, we've clearly got to make sure that we commit and do this. I suppose if I ask from a Birmingham social housing point of view, so this is a Birmingham question rather than a West Mids question. What should we do as Birmingham Social Housing Partnership to hold ourselves to account to prove that we've actually done it? So we both sign up, but show in 6 months, 12 months, you know, what does success look like from one of the organisations within Birmingham? I guess what would people want us to do and want us to see to not just sign up, but prove we've done it?
Okay, who wants to filter? Jean?
Sure. Oh, yes. Power. Yes. It's a really good question, Pete. I mean, there is like an accreditation you get. I mean, like a nice badge. I wouldn't want to overemphasize this because Neelam will kill me afterwards if I did. And Faye was effusive in the support. But what we've tried to do with the toolkit, and BVSC have been invaluable, their support in all of this, is try to make it as self-sufficient as possible, because we have very limited resource in at the CA in relation to homelessness, so that hopefully organisations can largely do it themselves, and a lot of those actions will be for those individual organisations, or if you do it as a partnership, hold a partnership. But I think the accountability one is really interesting, because wouldn't it be fantastic if we could have networks of folks within the region who would hold each other to account? So from Birmingham Social Housing Partnership, you know, as the exec, we could do more about that, couldn't we? And then we could publish what we've done in relation to it. So we have no power to make anyone to do it, as you say, rather than like, you know, a bit of like arms twisting and all the rest of it. But if we could do more of that, if we could say yes, and part of our commitment to collaborate is we will publish and we will show what we've been able to achieve and share the learning, what's worked and what hasn't worked, because then it saves others kind of, you know, repeating the same sort of challenges. I think that'd be really good.
Yeah, I agree, Jane. I think the whole thing is about collaboration. So it'd be good to see a number of organisations, if they can almost partner up and kind of peer mentor each other through the process, really, because this really is the starting point. And I'd really encourage for some of that activity to take place. And maybe that's a kind of conversation in Birmingham we need to have around the partnership table, which I'm happy to make sure that we do take that up. Okay, so the next person who indicated to speak was Jane Grant. Are you on mute, Jane?
Sorry, again, like somebody else said, you'd think we'd be used to that by now. Apologies. So Jane Grant from Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council in Warwickshire, really interested in this, and we've done a lot of work as a two-tier authority area on homelessness generally. But my question is, we're non-constituent members of the WMCA. Will this toolkit be available to us as we're not? Yeah, I thought you would say that, and pleased to hear that. Brilliant, thank you.
Absolutely, definitely yes to that one, Jane.
Thank you.
Andrea?
Hi, I'm from Shelter, and Rock Shelter always bangs on about stock availability. So where's the houses, please?
So stock available. So I think in terms of the stock availability, I think there are other conversations taking place and partnerships around stock. I know there's some work that Citizen are doing, and you know, we've had some really good announcements over the last few days in regards to that. I know particularly in Birmingham and across the region. I think this commitment to collaborate really needs to be that focus, that it is not just a homelessness sector to sort out the issues around homelessness, that actually there's collaboration and space for everyone across sectors, and this just helps people to find their way and able to do that without it being daunting. For some of us, we're used to doing this on a regular basis, but you know, there's other sectors that are not used to being in that space with us. So houses, in terms of stock, we know there's a lack of stock availability across the country when it comes to housing, but actually across the West Midlands, we are trying our best to address that as much as possible in other spaces, and we can have a different session about stock maybe later on down the path, if that answers that one. Okay.
Sharon, sorry, Sharon, can I just point Andrea on kind of the plan on the page? You'll see, Andrea, one of the 5 priority areas that is distilled everything down to is affordable supply. And so all of the work, as Sharon said, we've been looking at what does that mean? Truly affordable. The West Midlands has got a new definition of affordability that relates to people's incomes. So it isn't just a brand, you know, a product. So we're very focused on knowing that truly affordable supply has to be extended for all folks and those at risk. Yeah.
Brilliant. I think there was a question in the chat that asked I think it was by Stephen, whether we're happy for this to be shared with providers across all sectors nationally. What's everyone's views on that? Yeah, if that's getting the thumbs up, that's getting the thumbs up. As long as we can get it traced back, so we can give an argument to government of the benefits of it, so we can try and push for it to be mainstreamed, then I'm happy with that. So that's where I am with that, and everyone's nodding, so that's good. Okay, back to the hands up. We have Nikki.
Yes, hi, I'm Nikki D from Black Country Futures. Can you hear me?
We can indeed. Yeah. Hi, Nikki.
Hi there. Obviously, BVSE has been very involved in all of this. How involved are the voluntary sector councils in the rest of the Black Country, and what plans have they got to help move this forward?
Okay, I'm going to hand this one over to. I'm looking at Jean, but she's not looking too.
No, it's all right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the way that we operate, Nikki dear, good to see you, by the way. Hi, long time no see. What we've been doing, so on the task force steering group, we have got representation from obviously each of our local authorities and also the non-constituent members through Jane. But then what we did on the voluntary sector, so we've got issues where people have a mandate to represent different elements. So we've got violence against women and girls and the domestic abuse sector represented. We've got young people through YMCA, Black Country. So organisations that can feed into the networks within their areas. So your question, I can't give you a straight answer, but I would hope that the networks from our local authorities and others that are operating and their partners in each of our constituent authorities will be engaging others, so their CVSs or whoever else is involved in tackling the issue. So it's getting that web. We need to make sure that the web works and we get this message out, that it isn't just about local authorities and homelessness organisations. It is about everybody. If we're going to do this, you know, this keeping people in, as Jane said in the chat, keeping people in safe homes rather than them having to tumble out into the homelessness system. That's what we want. So anything you can do to help promote that, there you go. That's what we want. We want champions that will promote this approach, really.
Brilliant, thanks, Jean. And I think that answers Matt Lambert's question in the chat about where the faith communities fit into this. This is everybody. This is a cross sector. Nobody's off the table. You're all involved. And yes, we will feed into the faith group for the combined authority. We'll pick this up with Amric, who I believe is the chair of that. Okay, I'm going to go back to those with their hands up. Adwoa, you have to correct me if I get your name wrong. I'm really sorry.
Hi, thank you. Yes, I am Adwoa Owusu-Barnia. I think my camera should be on now, from Grand Union. You kind of touched on this in your answer earlier. There might be a bit of a specific question, but we are an arts organisation, so we work at separate hostel sites with allotments in gardening, and we do a lot of partnership working with social housing. But I wanted to ask what kind of ways you'd envision like organisations in the arts sector implementing this toolkit when the work that we do at Grand Union is linked more towards the how we empower people through the gardening and the conversation there. It's less about actually getting people into housing from our side, but we do partner with organisations who do that.
So I would say, sorry, before I bring Jean in, I would say you've got an incredibly important role to play, because this is about us, different organisations coming on board who reach different people. Not everybody's going to come through my door. There's going to be people that engage with you that won't, I'm not very creative, so they won't necessarily be engaging with me. It's about finding people where they're at. And the most important thing is preventing homelessness and supporting people when they are already in crisis. So with this toolkit, it will almost be a case of you have your part to play and who can you collaborate with across different sectors that will help the individual from falling further into crisis, or how can we help to pick them back up and put them back on the pathway. So you've got an essential part to play in this. And I'll hand over to Jean because I know.
Yeah, no, I absolutely totally agree with that. And I think, Adwoa, it's, you know, when we look at those four legs of the table, really, you know, people need to feel like they belong, that their life's meaningful, that they're doing important things, that they are recognised, they are a person, a whole person. And so all of the stuff, you know, all of that, the arts activities, you know, giving people opportunities to identify their talents and their strengths and to use them. That's what it's all about. It's not about boxing them down into the smallest space and they're then kind of, you know, it's back to sort of the Maslow hierarchy, a bit of shelter, a bit of food. It's not about that. It's about enabling and liberating all of their talents in order that they can take, you know, control and move forward and you know, live their lives. So please do use it, have a look at it, think about it, get others to do it with you. You know, that's what it's all about, really stimulating that thinking.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for your responses.
Thank you. And we'd love to come out and see the project as well. I'd love to come out and see the project.
Absolutely, that'd be great. That'd be great.
Fantastic. So I'm going to go next to Steve Philpott.
Thank you. Yes, my reflection is this, that absolutely the strength of this is something that's been built up through goodwill. It's being absolutely the bringing together of the willing, as Andy talked about, and the strength of the working together is because people want to and they're kind of choosing to be. And that's fantastic. We're talking about rolling that out. At the same time, we're talking about duty and national and making it happen and leverage that comes with that, but also the tension that you start to lose people in the fashion that we've kind of built this up. How do we balance those two things? The enthusiasm, the choosing to do, the collaborative, versus we want this to be national, we want it to be a duty, not just to refer, but to collaborate and go the extra mile. How do we make that work best for organisations, local authorities and governments?
Jane?
You always ask the really hard questions, Steve. I mean, I'm going to put it back to you, actually, because you were involved at the very start in this and you have experience of both within the system and all of the statutory stuff that comes with it, haven't you? And then the collaboration and the goodwill piece. Because I think you're right. I think there is a real that there can be a real tension there, can't there? And it's, I think we've learned all about the space of collaboration and goodwill and everything else. But yeah, how do we make that, a requirement, but without losing the goodwill that goes with it? So I'm really interested what your thoughts are on that.
Ask the question, Jean. Absolutely. I asked the question because I don't have a simple answer. And the sort of event like today is superb, and it generates enthusiasm, and we will have wonderful individual stories come out of it of people doing a great job of it. But if we actually want to design out and do a structural thing, then it has to go beyond the willing, and it has to become, a change force, and therefore it does become political, it does become economic. I see Kevin's got his hand up, so maybe he's got the answer. So maybe over to Kevin.
Okay. And I think it's also, Steve, just remembering that when it comes to homelessness across the region, there is that level of leverage from all parts. So, we have got the ministers in the region, we have got the mayor, you have got the MAG, so we're all ready to play our part. This isn't just about, us saying that, all the operational aspects have to have a commitment to collaborate. We're a part of this picture too. So we can do some of that more pushing upstream in places and being a little bit difficult when we need to be, but just banging on the door and actually pushing for the more upstream systemic changes in policies to assist with that. Kevin?
Yeah, I think just picking up on Steve's point, the very fact that we're talking about maybe having a duty shows that everything we said at the very first meeting of the Homeless Task Force, which is we've got to smash these systems and processes that clearly don't work because they end up with homelessness, still exists. Now, frankly, you'd love to get a point in my happy clappy world, you get to a point not very long into the future where we don't need that duty because everyone is working collaboratively, everyone is focused on the problem, and everyone is looking at creative ways of making sure we're not here in 5, 10, 15 years. And I think, the toolkit, based on everything Faye said, it's a kind of no-brainer that's a very logical way of approaching your own organisation, systems and problems. And if WHG can work incredibly effectively with Walsall Council, well, there's 6 other Mets in our region that can do exactly the same with their local providers. So frankly, I think our ambition needs to be to get to the point where we don't actually need a duty because there's no need to force anybody to do anything.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Kevin. And I'm going to wrap up that session now because I'm conscious that we've got to 1 o'clock. And I wanted to keep us on time as much as possible. I can hear this huge enthusiasm for this, which is fantastic. Thank you to everybody that was involved in creating this. I think that's the starting point. You've really captured what's needed across the sector. We expected no less. And also to Faye for giving us a great example of how it can be implemented and the enthusiasm to take it forward. I just want to end by saying that, we talk about homelessness, and sometimes a new scheme or a new initiative or something new comes into the space. And we have to be careful and make sure that we don't try to make that be the one solution to fixing everything. And instead, we need to remember that this is an option of tools that we have got and an option of solutions that we've got. Because with people, one size doesn't fit all. And with dealing with solutions, one size is not going to fit all. So this is just one of the things that we've got in our toolkit that we can go away and all work with collaboratively and really test it out. And please feedback your experiences of it, the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever it is. Make sure you get that in so we can modify it in the best way possible. So thank you very much, not just for attending today, but for your commitment to preventing homelessness and working with those who are in crisis on a daily basis. Truly appreciated across the region. And I just want to say thank you so much for everyone that attended. To have such an attendance on today's webinar demonstrates how much commitment we have got across the region, and that is genuine commitment from hearts of people who are going over, above and beyond their titles and their jobs. So thank you very much and have a wonderful afternoon. Take care, everybody. Bye.